first Python video on iteration or looping. In this video, we're going to talk about the for x in range type looping, or for looping by another name. And in the following video, we're going to talk about the while do looping. In Python, we don't have a do while loop, but let's get right into the for loops to begin with, and I'll see you when it's done. Now we're going to talk about iteration in Python. And iteration is kind of cool in Python, and we're going to begin to foreshadow some of the looping that you'll actually do in the AP Computer Science A course if you ever take that course in your high school career. So Python is a really cool way to begin to understand what we call nested loops, but let's start off with some basic loops. You'll notice, to save time in these videos, now that we've walked through a couple at a more of a snail's pace, I've already created the iteration from the template and set it up so that we're ready to just start rocking and rolling. So let's get into the first type of loop in Python, which is basically a for loop. But when I talk about Python, I like to call them the for x in range loops, but it's really a for loop, okay? So let's start with a default for loop. And bear with me a second while I get this going. Here we go. Cursor's on the right screen. Hashtag default for loop. All right, here we go. We're going to say for x in range, and we're going to put a 5 in there. We're just going to ask it to do this loop 5 times. So if I say for x in range 5, it's just going to do whatever's in this block of code, separated by the indent as always in Python, 5 times. All right. If it was a 7, it would do it 7 times. Really basic stuff. So here we go. Letter input is equal to get string. Please enter a character. A lot of times you'll notice the reason I leave this type of input the same is so that you can focus on what's new. Some of this looks consistent, so it's just kind of habit building, if you will. So we're going to print the letter you entered was, and again, I like to escape sequence those to make it look pretty. I like good punctuation in my sentences, which has an ASCII value of placeholder 1 dot format, and we're going to put in there letter input of 0, comma, ord letter input of 0. Okay, there we go. And that should loop and do that 5 times. So really what we did was we take these 2 commands that we used in our sequencing video. We're going to put them back in here and do it 5 times. Should be pretty simple. So let's try it. Python. Wait, I don't think I saved that. Control save. There we go. I like to see that green light. And this is going to be called iteration.py. Uh-oh, it didn't like something. GetString is not defined. What am I missing in here? Ah, here we go again. Okay. This time I'm just going to pull it all in for speed's sake. From CS50, import all. Okay. Control save. Let's try that again. Please enter character A, 97, G, J, T, E. Now, already that's kind of an interesting, useful application. You could write a little application that just tells you the ASCII value of different characters when you hit them. Okay? And it works on all of it. So I'm going to hit the single quote. Oh, that's an ASCII value of 39. That was me hitting the up arrow. Let's try ampersand. ASCII value of 38. Let's try @ symbol, 64. Okay? So that's kind of useful. And it took very little code if you look at it. Okay? Simple loop. You can have this, go until you type in something you already know, like a little a, and it'll just keep going until you hit the little a because you already memorized that one. Okay? You could play with the whole keyboard. All right? So cool stuff there. But that's a basic for loop. It's literally for x in range. Now, x is the iterator. That's the variable that rolls around 5 times. Okay? So that's one way to do a for loop. Now, what if we want to start at one number and end at another? Okay? So here's what we're going to learn. We're going to say this is a set range for loop. Okay, so we're going to give this a specific range. And we're going to say for x in range. And let's just do 2, 8, colon. And what I want to put as a comment over here is that the last number is a bridge too far. Okay? Now, I need to come back and give myself the indent there because I commented on the line with the colon. So be very careful. If you leave a comment on the colon line, you're going to lose your auto indent. So I just tabbed in and it'll be fine. This will not execute. This 8, it will not execute with a value of 8. This will go from 2 to 7. So it'll be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I should see 6 values because it starts on the 2. But 8 will not occur because that would technically be 7 evolutions. So the way we're going to test this is we're just going to say print. And we're going to say quote, placeholder 0. And we're going to put a tab. And I'm going to show you what that does. Dot format. And we're going to put the iterator itself in there. So we're going to see the values of x coming out. And then we're going to do something interesting. We're going to say end equals quote, quote. Okay? And then when that loop is done, we're going to come back out here and we're going to say print empty. Now, here's what happens. We know /t is a tab. Okay? So it's going to print the 0, or the 0 placeholder, which is x. So it's going to print x, print a tab, and then it's going to say end equals blank blank, which means really don't end, which means don't give me a return character. Don't come back to the next line. Or it would print 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 going down the page. This is going to suppress that, and they're all going to be separated by a tab. And then when it's done looping, and I know it's done looping because this print is on the same indent level as the 4. So basically, when it's done looping, it's then going to print nothing, which is going to trigger the carriage return. Okay? So that's what I wanted to show you in here, and we're going to see the values. So let's Control Save. Right over here. Let's clear this. Oops, let me Control C out of that. Clear. And let's run this. So we're going to say Python. I got to do it 5 times. And there we go. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So notice it never got to 8, so this is a bridge too far. Okay? Now, it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 elements. So if you go 8 minus 2, it's 6. So you can range check it, but remember it's like a zero indexing. This is the first one on it, so it's going to be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 to give us the 6 iterations. So what you've seen is if we don't specify, it's going to go from 0 to 4. Okay? It's going to go 0 to 4. And if we do specify, it's going to go from this one to whatever is before this. Okay? Now, the other thing we can do is we can do what's called looping as an iterator. Okay? Because X is an iterator and range is just integer looping. But now we're going to do what we're going to call loop as an iterator. And we're going to create this little guy. And we're going to put in chess, checkers, go, tag, and duck, goose as our list of games. Okay? And then we're going to, and notice these are all just spelled normally. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say for X in games, and I'm going to say print, and I'm going to show you another method in Python here, str for string dot upper of X. And that is going to give me the uppercase of whatever X is. Now X is looping through games. So what I should see is chess, checkers, go, tag, duck, goose going down the page, all uppercase. Let's see if that works. There we go. Chess, checkers, go, tag, duck, goose going down the page. Okay? That's pretty powerful if you think about what could be contained in lists or dictionaries or things like that. You can literally go through them and perform some action on all of them as you go through, as long as you're not like in a tuple that's immutable. You could still print it though, okay? But if it's changeable, I could literally be changing them as well. All right, so that is looping as an iterator, which then obviously we should be able to loop through a string. Okay, we've already shown you that you can index the 0 position. So let's show looping through a string. Okay, I'm going to scroll this up a bit. Looping through a string. We're going to say my string equals, and I'm going to do some very bad capitalization on purpose this time. So this won't be me making a mistake this time. I do enough of those. This time I'm going to do it on purpose. So I'm going to say it was the best of times. And I've seen people do this on the internet, and I'm never sure why they do it that way, but it was the worst of times. Okay? Horrible spelling. Not totally uncommon for me. Now, I'm going to say, and by the way, it doesn't have to be X. I've had students, how come you're not using X? I'm gonna change the iterator. I'm gonna say for banana in my string, colon, print string dot lower of banana, because that's my iterator. And since I want to print the string going across the page, I'm going to say comma end equals empty quotes. And then when that loop is over, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to print blank and drive the carriage back home. Let's try this. So I called my iterator this time banana, which is silly, yet highly effective in Python. So let's clear this. And notice it is all lowercase. Now that's, again, pretty powerful stuff in what you can do for string manipulation. Okay, these library calls that we can make can do all kinds of really neat stuff for us. All right, so now we're going to do 3 examples of nested loops, because nested loops are something that you're going to need to know. So we're going to stretch this video just a little bit longer than I like to go, but you can pause this and code along with me. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time explaining all of this, but I want you to see them, and then I want you to play with them, okay? So first thing we're going to do is say nested loops, okay? And the first one we're going to say is for row in range 12. So these are going to be my rows. And then I'm going to say for column, notice I indented in range 12, colon. And I'm going to say if row equals column, then I'm going to print an X. And I'm going to suppress the carriage return. Now, if it's not equal, right, I'm going to have an else. I'm going to say print, quote, just a dash, end equals that. And then I've got to come all the way out to the end of the inner loop. Whoops. The end of the inner loop, which means I've printed all the columns, and I need to print a blank so I can go to the next row. Okay? And then I'm going to show you another neat little print trick, because it's going to draw a line of symbols to kind of mark the separations between the other nested loops I show you. And this is really cool. I'm going to say print. And I'm going to do this little smiley face. And watch this. Times 20. Okay? And we'll just discover what this does, but you can probably bet that it's going to print this 20 times. We'll see if it goes down or if it runs across the screen. Okay? So we're going to save this. Now, row columns get, if the row and the column are equal, I get an X. Otherwise, I get a dash. I'm thinking this is going to be a diagonal of X's, but let's see if I'm right. Look at that, okay? Diagonal of x's, and there's my 20 smiley faces. So when I do the next one, we can tell them apart, okay? So it goes first row, column, 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 column 12 times. Then it does that print, comes down to the next one, column, column, oh, and it's equal, right? So that if test is getting done 144 times, okay? All right, let's do another one. We'll just call this nested loops round 2. Now, in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say for row in range 0, 12, I'm going to add another number in here, 1, okay? And why am I doing that? Well, this is the start, this is the stop, and this is how many I want you to go by. If I don't have that in there, it's just going to go by 1. Okay, but this might be different. Okay, in this case, it's not, but I want to show you the syntax. Okay, colon for column in range 0, 12, 1. And in this one, we're going to say if row is greater than column, oops, there's the colon, print R end equals quote. And if it's not, I'm going to say, here we go, elif row equals column, print we'll just print the assignment operator, end equals that guy. There we go. And then we're going to say else print L. All right, and then we're going to go back here and say print. So we're going from 0 to 12 by 1, and if the row is greater than the column, we're going to print an R. If they're equal, it's going to print the assignment operator. And then if neither of those is true, meaning row is less than column, it's going to print an L. So let's go see what that looks like. And you'll notice we have the L's here and the R's here, which is not what you might expect. Okay? So I want you to get in the habit of thinking about, just because I write an R or an L does not necessarily mean it's going to be right or left. Okay? Because this looks more like the left, this looks more like the right. Okay? There's a lot of questions on AP exams that will play that mind game with you. Okay? So you really need to look at what the iterator is doing. If the row is greater than the column, okay, it's going to be an R. All right? So when we look here, the row greater than the column is going to be, the row is 2, the column here is 0. Or the row is 1 here, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's the second row, so it's 0, 1. 1 is less than 0, so this is going to be the R here. Okay? So these are the equals, like the X's. but the L's are over here. All right, now, if I were to flip this, ooh. Okay, and make it less than. Let's see how that changes it. Now, the R's are on the other side. So I want you to be in the habit when you're doing nested loops to pay close attention to these kinds of things. Okay? To make sure you know that you know that you know that that stuff is correct. Okay? Now, I want to show you one more. I'm going to do some copy and paste to make this a little bit faster. So watch my changes closely. This time we're going to go from 12 to 0 by -1 and 12 to 0 by -1. And I'm going to put this back to the way it was, where the right and the left were kind of backwards from the way we might think, because I want you to see that I'm going to have it the same way in here. Okay? And what it's going to mean is as we count down, okay, and the rest of it's the same. As we count down, it's going to affect the values of row and column at the time, which will affect this if. Okay, so let's run this. And you'll notice that they flip. Now, see this? This gave me a nice separator. I didn't do that here. Okay, so I need to draw something in here just to make it a little clearer. So let's do this. Control C. Let's go down here and put it here. Oh, got to back that up one. Okay, and I'm just going to make this, let's make this a character that's not being used. That's too many. Let's go like that. Okay, let's try this again. Okay, and you can see that because I counted down from 12, the results flipped. Okay, so there's two ways to get the R's and the L's to flip. I can either change this sign, or I can count in the other direction. That's not intuitive the first few times you see it. Okay, so think about that. Play with it. Okay, play with changing this to 2, and this to 2, and this to -2, and -2, or 2 and 3, 2 and 5. Doesn't matter. Play around with loops, because in Python you can do a lot. I mean, you could do this in C. You can do this in any language. But in Python, it's pretty easy to play with. And it's pretty powerful. So there you have a really comprehensive look at iteration, aka looping, in Python. So now you've had a good look at some of the ways we can use the range to define the limits of a for loop, and how we can use the for x in whatever it is to iterate through various data types that we have. In the next video, we're going to talk about the while loops that are available in Python. So I'll see you on the other side.